You're not really hungry. You had lunch a couple of hours ago and it was a decent one. But something in you has already stood up and started toward the kitchen, and you know exactly what it's looking for. Something sweet, sugar, if you're being honest about it. If the day's been a stressful one, the craving is louder, and after 60, it's louder than it used to be. Then comes the part that bothers you more than the cookie does, the thought that you just don't have the discipline you used to. Here's what I'd like you to consider today. That's not a discipline problem, it's a timing problem, and the timing was set hours before you felt stressed about anything. So together, we'll go through what's actually happening in your body at that hour, why stress lands so much harder on it after 60, and exactly what to eat instead when it shows up. Real foods, real amounts, nothing you have to give up. And there's one thing that matters more than anything on that list. It happens at breakfast. We'll get there, because it's the part that decides how the rest of the afternoon goes. Why it's always the same hour. The craving keeps a schedule. It doesn't show up only on the hard days and stay away on the easy ones. For most people, it lands in the same window, most afternoons, whether the day brought bad news or nothing at all. That's a very strange habit for a feeling to have. Feelings don't watch the clock. Blood sugar does. Here's what's on that clock. After you eat, your blood sugar rises, which is normal and expected. Then your body brings it back down. In a lot of people, it doesn't stop neatly at the starting line. It keeps going a little past it, and about 2 to 3 hours after the meal, there's a small dip below where you began. That dip is the thing I want you to know about, because it doesn't feel like a dip. It feels like wanting something sweet. A 2021 study in Nature Metabolism put continuous glucose monitors on more than 1,000 people and watched what they ate for weeks. Those monitors are little sensors that sit on the back of the arm and read blood sugar around the clock. The ones who dipped lowest at that 2 to 3 hour mark got hungrier, went back to the kitchen sooner, and ate more the rest of the day. It was the dip that predicted it, not the peak. Several studies suggest the dip matters. It hasn't reproduced cleanly every time it's been tested, though. A 2024 analysis in the journal Appetite ran the same question through a randomized crossover trial and couldn't confirm several parts of the original picture. So it's a strong lead, not a settled fact. What it already explains is the thing you noticed on your own, which is that the craving keeps regular hours. The part that makes it personal is what happened between people. In that same research, 2 people eating the identical meal had very different dips. So why does the same lunch leave your neighbor fine at 4 o'clock and leave you going through the cupboard? What stress adds to that moment? Because a second thing is arriving at the same time, and after 60, it arrives with more force. When you're under stress, your body releases cortisol. Cortisol is the hormone that gets you ready to handle something, and one of the ways it does that is by making sure there's fuel in the blood. It tells your liver to release stored sugar, and it makes your muscle and fat cells less responsive to insulin, the hormone whose whole job is moving sugar out of the blood and into your cells. A 2022 review in Curious lays out that chain plainly, and a 2013 study in the Journal of Endocrinology found that even short-term psychological stress produced measurable insulin resistance in a controlled human trial. So stress isn't a mood that happens next to your blood sugar. It's an instruction sent directly to it. 2 things about this get louder for older adults. The first is that the stress system itself changes with age. Work published in Life Sciences back in 1997, confirmed since in several diurnal cortisol studies, found that as we age, the cortisol system runs at a higher overall output, and its daily rhythm flattens, so the evening decline that used to be steep gets shallower. You're not imagining that the afternoons feel different than they did at 45. The second is what stress does in the brain, in the moment you decide. A small brain imaging study in physiology and behavior in 2013 put 30 women in a scanner and showed them pictures of high-calorie food. In the women reporting the most chronic stress, the reward and habit regions lit up harder, while activity dropped in the prefrontal areas. the front part of the brain that handles planning and second thoughts. Afterward, that same group ate more from the snack table. 30 women in a scanner is a small study, and I'd never hand you that as proof of what's happening in your kitchen. But put it beside the dip, and you have something that finally fits the experience. One system is quietly telling you to find fuel. The other, the one that would normally say, "You're fine, dinner's at 6, has less to say than usual. There's also a third thing this can be, and it matters most for anyone on medication, so we'll sort that one out later. That's the meeting point. The dip is the reason it lands at 4 o'clock, and the stress is the reason you don't argue with it. Which still leaves the strangest part of the whole thing. The cookie keeps winning, even on the days you know all of that. Why the cookie actually works. There's a sentence that turns up in the comments on this channel more than almost any other. I know better, and I do it anyway. That sentence assumes the cookie is a mistake. The research points the other way. It isn't a mistake. It works. A 2011 study in psychoneuroendocrinology looked at women under heavy, sustained life stress and found something that sounds backwards. In the most stressed group, more abdominal fat went along with lower daily cortisol output and a flatter cortisol response when they were put under acute stress. The interpretation the researchers reached, supported by animal work on the same pathway, is that calorie-dense comfort food appears to genuinely turn the volume down on the stress system. That's why it's called comfort food. It is actually doing something to the stress system, not just to your mood. Which puts the whole willpower story in a different light. You haven't been failing to resist something worthless. You've been reaching, over and over, for something that actually delivers relief within a few minutes. Nobody breaks a habit like that by deciding to try harder. The same study named the cost, though. The comfort it buys is short, and the group buying it most often carried more abdominal fat and reported more emotional eating. So it works, but it costs you something. Which is why trying harder at 4 o'clock so rarely works. What changes the afternoon is arriving at it in a different condition, and that gets decided at 2 earlier points in your day. There's also a pile of advice about all this you can safely put down. What you can stop worrying about. 3 things, and they'll save you money and guilt. The first is the idea that you're addicted to sugar. It gets repeated everywhere, and it sounds explanatory, and the evidence for it in people is thin. A 2016 review in the European Journal of Nutrition went through the state of the science and concluded there's little support for sugar addiction in humans. The addiction-like behavior in animal studies showed up mainly when the sugar was made available only in bursts, not from anything sugar does chemically to the brain. That matters for you in a practical way. If you're not an addict, you don't need a detox, and you don't need a rule that says, never again. Rules like that are the ones people give up on after a week or two. The second is the supplement aisle. Chromium is the one that's marketed hardest for cravings. Human trials show modest effects on blood sugar markers and mixed results for cravings, and even the studies that find something find it reduces how intense or how frequent cravings are, not whether they happen. A pilot trial in the Journal of Psychosomatic Research in 2013 sits in that middle ground. That's a modest and uncertain benefit, and it's a long way down the list of places I'd send your money. The third is sleep, and here, the honest picture is better than the famous one. You've probably heard the numbers from a 2004 study in the Annals of Internal Medicine. Cut sleep to about 4 hours a night, and leptin, your fullness signal, drops 18%, while ghrelin, your hunger signal, rises 28%, and appetite for heavy carbohydrate food jumps 33 to 45%. Those hormone numbers have not held up. A 2024 systematic review, pooling 6 randomized trials and 141 people in total, found sleep loss doesn't reliably move leptin or ghrelin at all. What did survive is the part that matters to you anyway. Short sleep still leaves people eating more, whatever the hormones are doing. And the 2004 figures came from young men held at 4 hours in a lab. That's not a rough night at 63. So protect your sleep, by all means, but don't wait on it to fix your afternoons, because there's a lever you can pull tomorrow morning. The 2 meals that decide your afternoon. By the time you notice the craving, it's already in motion. The hours that set it up come earlier in the day. If the 4 o'clock reach is partly a dip arriving on schedule, then the meal that scheduled it is the meal you should change. And the strongest evidence points at breakfast. A 2013 study in the American Journal of Clinical Nutrition compared 3 mornings in the same people. Skipping breakfast, a normal protein cereal breakfast, and a higher protein breakfast built around eggs and lean beef, all matched at 350 calories. The high-protein morning carried 35 grams of protein. That morning produced lower ghrelin, the hunger hormone, across the day, higher levels of a fullness signal called PYY, reduced activity in the brain regions tied to food cravings, and less evening snacking on high-fat and high-sugar foods. That study was done in 20 young women who habitually skipped breakfast. It is not a study of people over 60, and I'm not going to pretend it is. What makes it worth your attention anyway is that it points the same direction as something older adults already have good reason to do. Work published in JAMDA in 2013 put the amount at roughly 25 to 30 grams of protein in a single sitting for holding on to muscle after 60. So the same breakfast change helps with both. So what does 25 to 30 grams look like on an actual plate? A cup of plain Greek yogurt is about 20 grams, so it gets you most of the way there on its own. 2 eggs are about 12 grams, which means 2 eggs alone don't clear it. But 2 eggs with a half cup of 2% cottage cheese, at about 13 grams, lands you at 25. A palm-sized piece of fish or chicken clears it comfortably. Toast and coffee, or cereal and a banana, land nowhere near it, and for a lot of seniors that is the breakfast. Lunch gets the same question. The question isn't whether it was healthy, it's whether it had protein and fiber in it, or was mostly starch on its own. A sandwich is fine. A sandwich with something real inside it, and a piece of fruit beside it, is going to leave you in much better shape at 4 o'clock. 4 o'clock was decided at breakfast, none of which helps on the afternoons it shows up anyway. And it will. What to eat when it arrives anyway. It's the middle of the afternoon, you want something, and you're standing in front of the cupboard. Whatever the answer is, it has to be ready in about 2 minutes, or it isn't an answer. So the goal isn't to talk yourself out of eating, it's to eat something that ends the dip instead of restarting it. A sweet thing on its own lifts your blood sugar quickly and then hands you the same problem again in another 2 hours. Protein and fiber don't do that. There's decent evidence for exactly this snack. A 2014 study in Nutrition Journal gave 20 women 3 different 160-calorie afternoon snacks on different days. A high-protein yogurt with 14 grams of protein, high-fat crackers, and chocolate. The yogurt cut afternoon hunger more than the chocolate did, pushed the start of dinner back by about 30 minutes, and was followed by roughly 100 fewer calories at dinner, identical calories in the snack itself, and a noticeably different afternoon after it. Again, 20 women with an average age of 27, so treat it as a direction rather than a promise. The one study run in your age group is tiny, and I'll give you its size up front. In 2020, in the journal Foods, 9 adults with an average age of about 77 swapped their usual mid-afternoon biscuit for a same-calorie snack carrying 9.2 grams of fiber, eaten around 3:30. Their blood sugar after dinner came down at multiple points, and the whole post-dinner curve was significantly lower. The effect was still faintly visible at breakfast the next morning. 9 people is a very small study, but it's the right people, at the right hour, and it points the same way as everything else here. So, 4 things worth keeping in the house. Plain Greek yogurt, 3/4 of a cup, about 15 grams of protein. Add cinnamon or a few berries if plain is too plain. Cottage cheese, half a cup, about 13 grams, and it's usually the cheapest protein in the dairy case. An apple with 2 tablespoons of peanut butter, which is about 7 grams of protein and about 4.4 grams of fiber from the apple skin, and an ounce of almonds, roughly 23 of them, at about 6 grams of protein and 4 grams of fiber. Notice what happens if you pair 2 of those. The apple and the almonds together land you around 8 grams of fiber, which is close to the 9.2 grams in that food study. There's nothing magic in that number. It's a quick way to check the portion is big enough to actually do something. If Greek yogurt is expensive or hard to find where you are, plain kefir, a boiled egg, or a handful of roasted chickpeas do the same job. The protein is the point, not the brand. And here's how I'd actually put it together, because 2 minutes is the whole budget. The afternoon bowl: half a cup of plain Greek yogurt, a heaped teaspoon of peanut butter stirred through it, a shake of cinnamon, and half an apple cut into it, skin on. 30 seconds of work, and it lands at about 12 grams of protein, with a couple of grams of fiber from the apple skin. The cold plate, if you don't want anything sweet: half a cup of cottage cheese, an ounce of almonds tipped beside it, cracked pepper over the top. And the one you make on Sunday and forget about: boil 6 eggs, leave them in the door of the fridge, and 1 egg with an apple is a perfectly respectable 4 o'clock. What isn't on the list? Fruit juice, dried fruit eaten alone, a granola bar, and a square of dark chocolate by itself. There's nothing wrong with any of them. They all lift your blood sugar and leave nothing behind to slow the fall, which is how you end up back at the cupboard at 5:30, having eaten twice. Have the chocolate. Just have it after the yogurt. Though how much any of that helps depends on something we haven't sorted yet. Which afternoon are you actually having? Which kind of craving is yours? Not every afternoon reach is the same event, and what you do about it depends on which one you're having. If it arrives at a predictable hour, on ordinary days as much as hard ones, and it's a want rather than an urgency, that's the dip talking. Change breakfast and keep a real portion in the house, and you'll feel that one loosen within a week or 2. If it arrives with the day, spiking on the afternoons when something's wrong, and quiet when nothing is, that's the stress half. The food still helps, because arriving at 4 o'clock already fed is a different starting position. But it's fair to also ask what the afternoon is asking of you, and to give that some attention, rather than only feeding it. And then there's the one that isn't a craving. If the feeling comes with shakiness, sweating, a racing or thumping heart, tingling, or a sudden anxious edge, that's a different signal. The American Diabetes Association describes those as symptoms of low blood glucose, which usually begin below 70 milligrams per deciliter, meaning the sugar in your blood has dropped under the level your body is comfortable with. It's driven by adrenaline, which is why it feels urgent in a way an ordinary craving doesn't. That distinction matters most if you take insulin, or a sulfonylurea such as glyburide, glipizide, or glimepiride, or a glinide such as repaglinide or nateglinide. The American Association of Clinical Endocrinology names those as the medicines carrying the higher risk of low blood sugar because they raise the insulin in your system. If your 4 o'clock feels like that, it's a conversation with your doctor, and possibly a meter reading, not a snack strategy. And never change or stop a medication on your own, or treat anything in a video, including this one, as a diagnosis. Once you know which of the 3 you're having, though, the food question gets much simpler, and it comes down to one thing worth changing tomorrow. One change for tomorrow. Not the breakfast. That one's coming, and it's worth doing, but it asks you to change a meal you've eaten the same way for years. And changes like that usually don't last. Here's the smaller one, and it works because it moves the decision to a time of day when you're not being asked to decide anything hard. Tomorrow morning, while the coffee is going, put 1 afternoon portion on the middle shelf of the fridge, at eye level, a half cup of cottage cheese in a small dish, an apple sitting on top of the peanut butter jar, the yogurt already spooned out, so all that's left at 4 o'clock is the cinnamon. Whatever you'll actually eat, it takes 2 minutes, first thing in the morning, while nothing about the day is difficult yet. Then the plan is a single sentence. If it's the middle of the afternoon and I want something sweet, then I eat that portion first, and the sweet thing still gets to come after. That last part is what makes it survivable. You're not giving up the cookie, you're changing what's in you when you eat it. Most afternoons you'll find you want less of it, and some afternoons you won't, and that's a perfectly fine result either way. You've been feeding yourself for 60-some years. This isn't asking you to learn anything. It's asking you to move one thing to eye level. There's a free action guide that lays all of this out on paper. 7 afternoons planned out, the protein numbers for a dozen everyday foods, and a grocery list short enough to fit in a coat pocket. The link sits down in the description, and again in the pinned comment. And I'd genuinely like to know which of the 3 you recognized. The one that keeps to the clock, the one that follows the day, or the one that comes with the shakes. Tell me which, and roughly what hour yours shows up. If the breakfast half is the piece you want, that's where the next video in this series goes. How to land 30 grams of protein at breakfast, out of ordinary food, for people who have never wanted a big breakfast in their lives. I'll see you there.